Another juicy conversation, my beautiful co-creators. This time I'm in Laguna Beach for part 2 with Robert Williams. Hello, Robert.
Hello, it's great to be back.
Good to have you, and this time in Laguna Beach. The first time was in San Francisco. I love this little Californian tour. I might never leave.
Me neither. It's so beautiful here. We're right by the ocean, right by nature.
Right by nature, and it feels so good. There is great vibration here. We have the ocean right here and the palm trees, and so amazing. So I just wanted to remind you guys, if you haven't seen the part 1, we talked about the field, and Robert is the co-founder of Claris, but also the Fields Research
Alliance.
Tell us what that is.
The Fields Research Alliance is an organization that will be a community of people with technologies that has been shown to help humanity, help the planet, no harmful side effects, doesn't use the resources that are preciously diminishing every day. And we have technologies that have been kind of in the drawers for a long time that we haven't had the resources or the community, human resources, to bring out to humanity. So the purpose of Fields Research Alliance is to allow those brilliant minds and brilliant hearts, an organization and a vehicle for them to bring their technologies to the public, to society, and there'll be 2 ways to do that. One is by gifting them to schools and people with serious diseases, and another way is into industry. So that's what we're starting.
That's amazing. There's so many amazing projects starting these days, and the planet really needs it. Tell us, I'm really interested about your profound experience that you had with near-death experience, you know, that which is now leading you to do what you're doing currently, because you were a successful musician playing with the Beach Boys.
Yes.
And then what happened there?
Well, first of all, I want to say, Lilu, that this is the first time I have felt comfortable sharing this experience with anyone publicly, or out on the airwaves and the web waves, and I think it's a sign of the times that I don't think it's going to freak anybody out or be inappropriate, especially with your audience and with your listeners. But I felt that it was time. I want to emphasize, though, that my experience, the reason why I'm sharing it with you and your listeners isn't because of me or because of some unique thing that I have. It's because it's the time that we begin to become more aware of the inner resources we all have. We each carry these secrets inside of us, and it's time for the secrets to be activated and to be used in our daily lives, to be used in our communities, and to be used globally. So that's why I want to talk about my experience in 1979 and some of the subsequent visions and experiences that I had after that.
Go for it, and please open this whole world for us wherever. I really do feel we are ready to hear this now, so thank you.
Okay, well, it was the late 70s, and I had a successful career as a musician. I was playing saxophone for the Beach Boys.
Bob Williams on baritone.
And on piano.
This man really needs no introduction.
I was having a lot of fun, and yet there was something happening with my body. I was getting more and more ill in various ways, and started to lose a lot of weight. And I went to the doctors, and they had no idea what was going on. Within a few months after this video that you just saw, I was down to almost 100 pounds. I'm 6'3", so I was quite thin. I wasn't digesting anything, and I was really, really sick. And my liver had broke down, and my other organs, and the doctor still couldn't figure out what was happening to me. So I just kept on hoping for an answer to my serious physical condition. And finally, they said, "Well, look, we don't know exactly what's going on, but we know that if you continue in this direction, you're going to be dead within 6 months." And it was a pivotal moment in my life, because I realized that although I respect allopathic medicine and the doctors all had good intentions, that if I had entered the hospital, I just intuitively knew I wouldn't come out alive. And with all due respect to, it was just an intuition. And so what I chose to do is simply begin to trust the universe and pray and just surrender into my hope that somehow a revelation would occur about my health. Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was several weeks. I was still performing. I was still, well, actually, I wasn't performing publicly, but some in-studio recordings I continued to do and some work on the side. But pretty much I was in bed all the time. And one morning, I actually woke up, and I was very, very dizzy and very disoriented. And to this day, I don't know whether I passed out or whether I stumbled and hit my head. Either way, I hit the floor because there was a cut when I came out of this state. But I found myself hovering above my body. And at that time, this was in 1979, I had never heard of a near-death experience. I had never read anybody else's experience, nor had any clue what would happen after one left their body or died or anything like that. So to see the first experience of seeing my body on the floor was amazing, because I was thinking, and by the way, when you're in a higher dimension, thoughts take a different form. It's much like a semi-dream state, but much deeper, much more real in a sense. But anyway, so for lack of better way to talk about it, I could say I had the thought, well, who is seeing this body? You know, my eyes are in my head, and so what perceptual mechanism was playing out here? And I'll come back to that. I felt my body turn and go towards this incredible light. And like you've heard, I'm sure it was an extremely blissful, extremely ecstatic space, dimensional space. And wow, it was just a relief of all suffering. And yet I still felt my individuality. I still was perceiving this event. And I went to a place where a being showed up, and the being said that I was indeed given that I had a choice, that I was indeed transferring my bodies from one form to another, and that I could go on if I wanted, or I could go back. And I couldn't figure out why I would want to go back. I remember feeling my mother and everybody that I knew grieving, but it wasn't strong enough to get me back in my body. I asked, well, what purpose is there? And the being said that I had a purpose, that it was a significant purpose. It was a purpose in helping humanity and helping the earth. And that's all I needed. I just realized that although I was having fun playing music, I had intuited before that there was something more out there, or something more in there, maybe inside of me, that wasn't activated yet. So as soon as that decision was made, and I made it, there was several dimensions that I experienced coming back into my body. And one of the things I want to emphasize here is that since the experience, I've talked to others who've had the same experience, and I've read a lot. It's been many years, and it isn't my unique experience. And we are not alone. We are not alone. We forget sometimes. We feel alone because our bodies are separate, and we find ourselves alone with our thoughts, alone with our wounds perhaps, and we feel confused. And at the same time, because I've had this experience and several subsequent experiences of going into the higher dimensions, or more holistic dimensions, it's not so much higher meaning better, it's more holistic. In a sense, they're better because there's less suffering. But we are here incarnated for a specific purpose, and it's not a punishment, it's not some difficult school, although we are here to learn. But it's a very precious time to be incarnated, and it's a very precious gift we have to be in our bodies, to be fully incarnated, and yet to experience a greater reality, a more holistic reality that encompasses what we call the field, the web of life, that encompasses the reality of connectivity, and a precious connectivity not only with each other, but with higher beings or beings on higher dimensions that really love and care for us. And there's all kinds of, just like there's all kinds of people, there's people who are right now probably robbing a bank or doing something that's not so pleasant. There are beings like that on the higher dimensions, but there are also beings and angelic realities, and higher than that even, that are completely full of unconditional love and available at any given moment to not only inspire us, but to guide us, and to, more than anything, to love us and to hold us. So I experienced those beings in the different dimensions. And there was also a dimension of geometries and ratios and symbols that I saw, and later did research on what those meant. They're intrinsic, they're inside of us. So at first I thought this might have been a gift for me, but I don't believe that anymore. It was I stumbled upon a reality that is here and everywhere, always available to us. And it's the fundamental foundation of our existence here on this earth plane and in the plane of physicality. So there are several things I experienced in coming back into my body, and that changed me forever. But I remember one of the most blissful parts of that event was becoming awake in my body, and I felt my body, and I didn't have any pain at that moment, but I was feeling my hands, my feet. And I remember I was living in Santa Barbara at the time. It was springtime, and I was right by our gardens, and the window was open, and so I could hear the precious sounds, or the beautiful sounds of nature, the birds singing. Have you ever been out in the woods or in where there's a bunch of garden life, and you just hear these kind of these amazing sounds? I guess they're insects.
So everything was like amplified?
Yeah, everything was
more vivid.
Everything was more vivid, but it was also just the first thing I heard in my body again. And immediately I began to understand that with the bird songs and the songs of the insects, and this, like, we can hear the ocean sounds, and we can look at the ocean, and when we look at natural environments, we actually are resonating with something inside of ourselves. That's why we perceive them as objects of beauty. That's why we feel comfortable in nature, not because it's outside of ourselves and we like being in nature because it's some kind of like it's outside of ourselves in the sense that we don't spend as much time in nature as we used to. So we're in buildings, we're surrounded by environmental influences that are not specifically resonating with those fundamental frequencies of nature. And we can talk about that. There's electromagnetic pollution and all kinds of stress that we are involved with every day, we have to contend with every day. So I'm listening to those birds and I'm listening to the insects, and I realize that, oh my God, this planet is full of answers, solutions, and secrets, and that the potential of this planet, of nature, was really to be a paradise, to be a place without suffering. And I know that might sound very lofty, and yes, I was in a semi-altered state, but I understood it completely, a deep sense of knowingness that the natural laws are full of answers. They're full of secrets. We call them secrets because we haven't tapped into them enough. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing that is so relevant to that experience is that we are not separate from that. We are not separate from nature. We are not separate from those secrets. Our bodies came out of the earth. Every single molecule came from the earth and came from the stars. In fact, every single cell rejuvenates or completely reorganizes itself every 7 years at maximum, some every 2 or 3 months. And so these cells are created, they're maintained for a certain point, and then they they go back into and they basically decompose very quickly, and the new cells come in, and the atoms that replace those cells are what they call they're free atomic particles that are exchanging every single moment. And in a sense, there's a kind of a quantum physics hint that we are connected. We have this illusion that, you know, my body's my body, your body, and that's okay, because they are perceived as differently, and we have our own stories behind them. We have our own identities associated with our bodies. That's true. Just like one tree is no different, is completely different in many ways than any other tree. That's the unique, amazing quality of how nature manifests itself, is that it manifests itself in uniqueness each time, in diversity. So there's no two fingerprints alike, there's no two insects that are identical, no two flowers that are identical, no two people that are identical. However, at a fundamental level, there is one thing happening. There is a unity of wisdom and knowledge and love that continues to manifest, continues to grow into an expressed value, and then move on to a different body, a different expressed value. So one of the things that I want to touch on now, if I may, with your listeners, has to do with right now, 2011. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
All right.
We're all ears and hearts.
All right. Yes. And so we have there's an example of external interference if it's catching, you know. Now that's a sound of a garbage truck, right? That's an important part of society. But you know, we're not gravitated to it. We don't want to go, oh, that's a wonderful sound. You know, we want to listen to it all day long. But if we heard birds and nature sounds, we automatically want to, we feel more at home there. We feel it more at home with the ocean sound. It's just so obvious when you think about it. What is life supporting, what is part of natural energy, and what is not? We can feel it. We're gravitated to one and kind of resisting the other.
So now really is that choice. We have to make that choice right now in 2011.
Yeah, well,
every day?
Yes. And it's an easy choice once you understand it. The flower, we spoke a little bit last interview about the seed, let's say a rose seed, a rose. There's the seed, doesn't look anything like the rose flower. It goes to a sprout, goes into a stem, goes into the different leaves, the thorns, all those aspects of the rose. They're still the rose. It's still a rose plant, but it hasn't expressed its highest potential, you could say. It's still a stem, or it's still a green leaf, and the paradigms we talked about. And then at some magical point, governed completely by nature, even a rose farmer cannot predict exactly when the flower will blossom. He knows generally, you know, he's been given hints. He's done it many, many times. But the exact moment is always the divine mystery. And they can't duplicate it in a lab. They can't take a rose seed and duplicate all the molecular components and cellular networks and elements and make a rose seed grow. It's never been done, and it never will be, because that magic life force is the part of the field of life that is intrinsic, innate in nature, and it goes through cycles. So just like the seed, to the sprout, to the stem, to the leaf, to the rose, humanity is going through a cycle. So we've gone through different steps of our own human existence, our own human expression. And we could say we can go back and look at history and how we've evolved, and the different historical events and the wars we've gone through, and we could just say those were cycles of evolution that humanity had to go through. In this current time period we're in, and I'm talking Right now it's March 2011, and it's been happening for several years. We're reaching that point of mass transformation, just like the bud into the flower, and everything will look different, or may look different. And this is where you and I and others and your listeners and viewers can participate actively, because just like the rose farmer, if he's not paying attention to his garden, if he's not paying attention to the weather patterns, then he might miss that opportunity, and the roses won't bloom. I mean, literally, it's not an analogy. They will not, they just die, and he's got to start the whole cycle again with new seeds, and comes up. So that precious moment, it's the most vulnerable moment. It's preceded by the most chaos. Literally, the cells of the rose bush are they're not coherent. They're falling. Some of them don't make it. They go down the stem. There's disorganization, and then there's this magical moment that the rose shows itself. And the rose shows itself with specific geometries and a specific expressed value that has been showing itself in roses and plants and nature for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. But some things take hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years to even blossom once, and that's what we're going through with humanity. We have never experienced this before, at least in our modern history. Hundreds of thousands of years. There's mythology about Atlantis and Lemuria and other times, but we don't know how that applies. We can kind of go off in a thought about that, or an imagination, but literally right today there's a mass transformation potential happening. We can see it in the economy, we can see it in the quality of life, even in the natural disasters that are happening. So back to my near-death experience and several ones that I've had afterwards, the message here is that where our attention is at is critical to the outcome of our lives. Not so much intention. Intention is important. Attention, A-T-T, attention, E-N-T-I-O-N,
Yeah.
attention. So one thing that I want to share, and I've learned this myself, that if we continue to keep our attention on our thoughts and our emotion, then that's one reality, and it's a valuable reality. We like thinking. We like daydreaming. We like problem solving. And like we learned in school, the square root of 126 is, and we start to think, and we use our minds to come up with an answer, and it feels good when we have that answer. But there's another quality of our consciousness that we can use right now, and that is the quality of the heart. That is identifying what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and then going beyond that. It's the space between the words. It's the space between the thoughts. Once we do that, and we're comfortable with that space and that stillness and silence, then we naturally begin to become more resonant and more connected with these higher beings and our higher selves, our higher potential. Because the mind is a record of information. It's a record, it's a storehouse of impressions. And the emotions are a record of impressions and storehouses of information. But the heart can speak to the new creation, the newness that the mind has not experienced yet. And it has to be through the heart that we can experience a new reality. And once we get into that place of connection through our hearts, then first of all, the experience is more compassionate. It's automatic. We don't have to learn compassion at that point. It is there. We are compassionate because we feel greater than our bodies. We feel more holistic. And compassion comes naturally. And so does love. And so does inspiration and new thoughts and new qualities of the mind. And so from that point, the ahas can come. We're actually being guided by our higher selves, by our higher potential. It's the gardener that is nature itself that is saying, okay, this is the moment, and here is your gift of action. This is what you can do today. And it doesn't necessarily mean going on Oprah and doing something huge and for the masses. It could just mean a different quality of love for your child or for each other, or just a different quality of consciousness as you drive to work. That extends beyond your body. There is no question about it. And people can read the research about that. That quality of our consciousness, which is between the thoughts, it doesn't negate any thought. It doesn't negate any emotion. But once you get used to it, it's there all the time. It's like the feeling of, a great saint once said, it's like the feeling of mother being at home. When we were all children, and most of us played independently from mom once in a while. But we knew she was there somewhere, maybe in the kitchen, maybe in the other room. And we were alone. We had that feeling of safety. And that's where I come back to, we are not alone. So the Divine Mother, the divine guidance of nature itself is alive and is ready to nourish us and to guide us. And that's how we're going to navigate through this tumultuous time period of Earth. That's how we're going to be drawn to each other, the ones who know about this higher state of consciousness, this higher reality. We know it, we feel it. I met Peter, I met Serge and some of your friends, and you just feel at home with them. We didn't have to go into our big stories and talk, where did you come from and where did you grow up? That will be interesting, that'll be fun. And your viewers, we're feeling it right now.
There's an immediate resonance. That
resonance is the wisdom of the heart. It's the wisdom of our consciousness beyond our thoughts. Our thoughts are saying, I've never met him before. Our thoughts might be saying, we should do our due diligence on this guy. Maybe he's making the whole thing up. And that's appropriate at certain points. Our minds needs to do, because there are forces that are just like somebody robbing the bank, just like somebody down here doing something that's not so great. We're not in a completely enlightened age, so we have to be careful and trust God but tie our camel, as they say. But that quality, though, once we are living that quality of the heart, it's kind of like a little signal that goes off. You meet somebody else that's in that same space, and this is, she's there. I want to know more about her. I want to know more about him. I can feel it. I can feel that love. I can feel that compassion. Why? Because I'm living it too. And there's sympathetic resonance. It's called coherence.
So how can we more align with our heart? How can we more open our heart? How can we let that wisdom really shine out and be in tune with it? What are your recommendations?
The best way I found right now is life is like a series of sounds, right? It's like a symphony, or rock and roll, whatever music you listen to. There's sounds. There's all these things that we can listen to, but there's gaps in there between songs, and even during songs there's a gap of silence. And so when you become aware, it's just will naturally happen during the day. You'll become aware, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What's going on here? So you use the mind, and the mind asks itself, what am I thinking? I was thinking about my work, I was thinking about my children, I was thinking about a project I'm working on. So you just ask, what am I thinking? Or what am I feeling? I feel a pain here, I feel sad here, or whatever the emotion is, identify it. And then just accept it. That's the first step. Accept it. That's actually unconditional love. You're not trying to fix it. You're not trying to resist it. You're not trying to hold on. You're just identifying and accepting it. And naturally, as you accept it without resistance, the quality of the heart opens, because the quality of the heart is timeless. And when we're in a sequence of time, which is the mind and our emotions, then we're in a sequence of time. But when we identify what that sequence is with the intention of unconditional love, just acceptance, not doing anything with it, the heart begins to open. Literally, the heart chakra begins to spin, begins to become more active. That's step number one. Step number two is to actually put your attention on your heart, right here, your heart chakra, and just feel that. Now, there are several iterations of that, But if during the day, that's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. What am I thinking? What am I feeling?
Am I viewing life through the heart?
Good. Now accept that. Even that thought. Accept it. Be with it. Accept any feeling in your body. Accept any feeling that you're having, any emotion. Be comfortable with that. Let go. Let go. Accept. Accept this moment. That's a quality. Bliss comes. Joy is a natural consequence of opening the heart. Joy is a natural consequence. I didn't say anything funny. I didn't do anything. You felt the bliss because your heart began to open more. So everyone listening, everyone watching, let's do it right now. Peter, Serge. What are we thinking? What are you thinking? You're watching this video. Start there. You're listening. What's going on? Now accept it. Completely and unconditionally, just accept that. We'll feel it. We begin to connect. We begin to feel. The heart is there. We don't have to intellectually know what's happening. In fact, we shouldn't. But a clairvoyant can actually see the heart beginning to glow. And this is the medium of exchanging information, ourselves, our individuality, along with our unity, is through that medium of the heart. It is the ultimate use of the field of consciousness. It's the ultimate web of life. It is our hearts. And it's an act of devotion to something higher than our minds. So we can call that identification love. Devotion comes. We're actually devoted, we don't have to be devoted to a particular religion or concept. That's helpful too, doesn't matter. We are devoted to something greater than ourselves. And then we surrender to that. We trust in that, just like we trust nature. Just like we can trust mother at home. It takes faith. We trust that. Most of us have had such horrible experiences at some point that we are afraid to trust anything outside of ourselves. But this is trustable. This is trustable. And once we get a taste of it, there's no turning back.
You surely got a taste of it while you're near death experience. So you really, a lot of people that have those experiences, I hear, really want to get back to it and kind of you integrate it within your life because it was so good. You bring those qualities back in your life right now, and you share that with us because this is really a pristine, pure, sparkling place that some of us and. My point is that we don't need to go through those near-death experience to experience it.
We've all experienced it. We just don't. Mine was very dramatic, okay, but we've all experienced this. Think just each of you have had an experience. Maybe just sitting by the ocean, maybe in a concert. We feel that magic, that amazing energy that just comes from nowhere, that inspires us, that we feel more whole, more complete. Maybe walking in the woods in nature, or maybe just with a loved one or with a child. It can happen at any time, anywhere. It's available to us. We've all experienced it. So we can remember, and then the trick is to begin to go there consciously.
Mm-hmm. To recognize it.
To recognize it. Meditation helps, prayer helps. There's all kinds of ways to get out of the mind or to accept the mind and go beyond the mind, more holistic life. So that's what I'd like to bring to as many as possible from my experience, because it is a critical time. We want the roses, we want the rose garden to bloom, we want the flowers to blossom, and that is, the metaphor ends there because humanity's blossom we've never seen before. We can't imagine it. We've been the stem and the roots and the leaves for as long as we could possibly remember. We don't know what the rose of humanity is going to look like, but it is happening. It is happening. And I don't have time to go into it. It's not just my intuition. There's all kinds of evidence. There's all kinds of prophecies. We can look at the economies and what's going on, the symptoms of even futuristic economists and people are looking at, oh my God, the system has to change. There's too many weak loops in pre-existing and then existing weak loops in our system of society, all aspects, interdisciplinary. So I know time's just about up. What are we thinking? What are we feeling? Start here, start there, and then the inspiration will come. Maybe not immediately. It might come that night, tonight. It might come tomorrow morning. We're driving to work, we're walking somewhere, and then boom, we'll be guided. We each have a gift. None of us is without a gift. That's why we're incarnated, and we're here to experience that full blossoming of humanity, and the time is now. It's a golden moment.
The time is now, clearly. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was so juicy. You're juicy.
Thank you, Lilu. And thank you to your viewers.
Ah, what a blessing, you guys. How awesome is this to have those kind of conversations, huh? Aren't we blessed to be in this space, time, and reality to have this right now and to share this all around the world and make this a global conversation, inspiring millions of people. I'm so inspired by what's happening right now on the planet, and people like you that are opening up and sharing those true life-changing stories that enable our humanity to open up, and our vulnerable side too, because it has a lot to do with opening that part of ourselves, huh?
Yes. And we feel, and when we begin to serve in that way, it's the bliss that comes, or the fulfillment that comes, is automatic. It's not that we don't intend to get something from our children when we give love to our children. It's just part of the program. You get that back. And when we give to each other from the heart, not intellectually so much, not trying to get something, when we learn about that, about unconditional love, believe me, it's part of the system. It'll be bliss beyond anything we can have calculated and sought after in a goal-oriented structure. Not that those things are wrong, those things are included, but the higher level of society, higher level of love is right upon us right now, and it can be experienced by anybody.
Well, that's it, my beautiful co-creator. As promised, another juicy conversation here. I send you much, much love. Actually, we both send you much love, huh?
Absolutely.
From our heart to your heart. The time is now.
That my experience, the reason why I'm sharing it with you and your listeners isn't because of me or because of some unique thing that I have. It's because it's the time that we begin to become more aware of the inner resources we all have. We each carry these secrets inside of us, and it's time for the secrets to be activated and to be used in our daily lives, to be used in our communities, and to be used globally. So that's why I want to talk about my experience in 1979 and some of the subsequent visions and experiences that I had after that.
Go for it, and please open this whole world for us wherever. I really do feel we are ready to hear this now, so thank you.
Okay, well, it was the late 70s, and I had a successful career as a musician. I was playing saxophone for the Beach Boys.
Bob Williams on baritone.
And on piano.
Ah, this man really needs no introduction.
I was having a lot of fun, and yet there was something happening with my body. I was getting more and more
Another juicy conversation, my beautiful co-creators. This time I'm in Laguna Beach for part 2 with Robert Williams. Hello, Robert.
Hello, it's great to be back.
Good to have you. And this time in Laguna Beach. The first time was in San Francisco. I love this little Californian tour. I might never leave.
Me neither. It's so beautiful here. We're right by the ocean, right by nature.
Right by nature, and it feels so good. There is great vibration here. We have the ocean right here and the palm trees, and so amazing. So I just wanted to remind you guys, if you haven't seen the part 1, we talked about the field, and Robert is the co-founder of Claris, but also the Fields Research
Alliance.
Tell us what that is.
The Fields Research Alliance is an organization that will be a community of people with technologies that has been shown to help humanity, help the planet, no harmful side effects, doesn't use the resources that are preciously diminishing every day. And we have technologies that have been kind of in the drawers for a long time that we haven't had the resources or the community, human resources to bring out to humanity. So the purpose and just surrender into my hope that somehow a revelation would occur about my health. Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was several weeks. I was still performing. I was still, well, actually, I wasn't performing publicly, but some in-studio recordings I continued to do and some work on the side. But pretty much, I was in bed all the time. And one morning, I actually woke up, and I was very, very dizzy and very disoriented. And to this day, I don't know whether I passed out or whether I stumbled and hit my head. Either way, I hit the floor because there was a cut when I came out of this state. But I found myself hovering above my body. And at that time, this was in 1979, I had never heard of a near-death experience. I had never read anybody else's experience, nor had any clue what would happen after one left their body or died or anything like that. So to see the first experience of seeing my body on the purpose of Fields Research Alliance is to allow those brilliant minds and brilliant hearts an organization and a vehicle for them to bring their technologies to the public, to society, and there'll be 2 ways to do that. One is by gifting them to schools and people with serious diseases, and another way is into industry. So that's what we're starting.
That's amazing. There's so many amazing projects starting these days, and the planet really needs it. Tell us, I'm really interested about your profound experience that you had with a near-death experience, which is now leading you to do what you're doing currently. Because you were a successful musician playing with the Beach Boys.
Yes.
And then what happened there?
Well, first of all, I want to say, Lilu, that this is the first time I have felt comfortable sharing this experience with anyone publicly, or out on the airwaves and the web waves, and I think it's a sign of the times that it won't. I don't think it's going to freak anybody out or be inappropriate, especially with your audience and with your listeners. But I felt that it was time. I want to emphasize, though, ill in various ways and started to lose a lot of weight. And I went to the doctors, and they had no idea what was going on. Within a few months after this video that you just saw, I was down to almost 100 pounds. I'm 6'3", so I was quite thin. I wasn't digesting anything, and I was really, really sick. And my liver had broke down, and my other organs, and the doctor still couldn't figure out what was happening to me. So I just kept on hoping for an answer to my serious physical condition. And finally they said, well, look, we don't know exactly what's going on, but we know that if you continue in this direction, you're going to be dead within 6 months. And it was a pivotal moment in my life, because I realized that although I respect allopathic medicine and the doctors all had good intentions, that if I had entered the hospital, I just intuitively knew I wouldn't come out alive. And with all due respect to, it was just an intuition. And so what I chose to do is simply begin to trust the universe and pray. And